situation. Now you have a story. The angels can't sing.
Hello, everyone. We're here.
Hello.
Hello.
We're here. Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
Yeah.
It's good to see everybody here with us once again.
And it's daylight.
It's daylight. It's really, well, giving away our secrets. This is actually a recorded version of the program. First time we've recorded an event, so it's not nighttime.
Exactly.
On
Usually
Saturday.
it's night.
Yeah, it's earlier in the week. And
Yes.
so this is pre-recorded, a lot of stuff going on this Saturday night. And we don't want people knocking at the door all night during the program.
Yes.
So we're pre-recording this. Got a special guest that's coming up. Glad to see he's already in our waiting room.
Yes.
Our State Senator Joe Robach is going to be joining us for an interesting conversation today. So we're looking forward to that coming up in a little bit. We're glad to have you with us once again Saturday night here. And once again, just one of those weeks, it just
One of those weeks.
keeps rolling on and on and on. There's all
Yes.
kind of things
Let's say
happening.
it keeps pouring on.
It keeps pouring. When it rains, it pours. That kind of deal.
Yeah.
So it is absolutely crazy, all the different things that happen within a week these days. And man, it's glad to be able to have an opportunity to talk to you guys about these things as they come up. And hopefully, it stirs the right kind of conversations. But lots of things have been going on. Want to share a few of them with you as we get ready to get before our guest comes on tonight. First of all, another mentally disturbed man killed, shot by the police in the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And so, it just seems to continue to go on and on with this. I mean,
Sadly.
you can see the crowds right now they've been protesting this ever since it's been going on. And so you can see all the types of things that have been happening, night after night now because of the frustrations of once and yet again.
Yes.
You have particularly an African-American man, and in this case, mentally disturbed. We've seen that a couple times.
Yes.
And they've had, some situations. The family calls the police. And in doing so, the end result is somebody ends up dead.
Exactly.
The family is trying to help
Trying
protect
to get
and
help.
preserve.
Right.
And asking for the police's help because, there's an issue and it may be dangerous.
Right.
And so the result of that is somebody dies.
Somebody dies. And it's the same situation that took place here in Rochester with Daniel Prude.
Absolutely. It's the same
exact thing. A mentally ill person. And the family calls the
family
police.
calls the police.
Yes.
Right. We need help.
We need help
with this person. He's having a real problem, a mental breakdown. We need your help. And so how do they come? They come in the way they would treat a criminal and end up having shoot him in self-defense.
Exactly.
But,
and both of these men, Daniel Prude and the man in Philadelphia, they were both parents.
Right.
They both had children. So, now their children are left without a male figure in their lives.
Right. And they were struggling.
And they
were clearly struggling.
Yes.
It was known that they were struggling. But it goes back to these, how do you handle these mental health type of situations?
Exactly.
And do the police have the right thing? So the chief of police of Philly comes out in response to this and says, yes, we need to retrain. We need to retrain differently on how to handle these things. But wouldn't you think by now everybody would know that?
They would have, right. Well, they know it, but have they put anything in place?
Well, clearly not.
To implement a plan on how the police are going to deal with mentally ill people.
And it's pretty clear it's not just a local issue. It's a national issue.
Right.
And it really needs to be looked at on a national basis.
Yes.
How do we handle these types of things? They're coming up over and over and again, and we're not getting any better. I say the police department is not getting any better at handling these things across the board. So there's got to be a problem. It needs to be resolved. It needs to be looked at.
Right.
And we can't just keep saying we got to do something about this.
Exactly. We can't just keep saying it. They need to find a way that the police can engage and interact with mentally ill people, even if it's not the police. If they have a person, a trained psychologist, a behavior specialist, or something like that, if they have that person on site, maybe they can help defuse the situation. And the police, I have an issue with the police. They should not have to shoot to kill.
Right.
I mean,
so learn from what works, right? Because, for example, Rochester, who had the Daniel Prude incident, has recently come up with that. We're going to be doing some things differently with mental health specialists to get them involved in how we handle these cases. So now
Right.
they have a direct contact to be able to call them in.
Mhm.
But let's learn from what works, right?
Right.
Why are we not thinking about that across the country? So there's all these things that can be done,
Mhm.
but there's just not anything pushing to make these changes.
Pushing it forward. Right.
So speaking of changes and things going on, another situation that's going on right now has to do with African-American death rates because of COVID. Everybody knows COVID has been a terrible thing throughout the country. It has been
far
devastating.
too long. Yes.
Yes, for the whole
Yes.
whole year thus far, almost.
Yes.
And but it's also been commonly stated that amongst African Americans, that rate of death in particular, not just sickness, but death,
Mhm.
is significantly higher.
High,
Well, here's
yes.
some new information, excuse me, that just came out about it right now.
Yes.
Black Americans dying of COVID-19 at a rate that's 3 times the rate of white people.
3 times.
3 times the rate. It's almost 3 times away. Here's the actual numbers right here. 50.3 per 100,000 for African Americans are dying, compared to 20.7 for whites, 22.9 for Latinos, 22.7 for Asian Americans. So that's about 2.5 times as many.
Yes.
And what is going on? I mean, what is
really going on
that this impacts African Americans so significantly more than it does other people? You know, there's a lot, and we're not going to be able to answer all this, especially in the time we have today, but there's a lot to be investigated, understood about why this would be 2.5 times significantly more for one ethnic group than for pretty much any other in the country. It's just mind-boggling.
It really is.
To think that's the case. And then you have one little thing which is kind of an opposite direction on that, which maybe helps us. I don't know if it helps us
in Mississippi
in some kind of way, but to understand some things. But here's an example where they're saying now from CNN that in Mississippi, more white people now have gotten COVID. Didn't talk about death rates.
Right. They have
more have gotten than African Americans. And a lot of what's implied in this is that there's a different attitude in terms of masks and safety. Because one thing that's happening is because African Americans are hearing the fact that we're dying more rapidly, we're taking this a whole lot more seriously.
We're taking it very seriously.
We're like, look, I'm coming to my house, where's the Lysol? Cleaning everything. I need to have hand sanitizer. I'm breathing everything.
You know, especially in states like New York State,
right,
which was the highest. African Americans had the highest rate of COVID. And now it's come down to like being one of the lowest.
Right.
So African American people have taken this mask wearing very seriously because, you know, at that time, you know, there were people that were decomposing. They had people in coolers and, you know, what have you. So African Americans are taking it a lot more seriously.
Well, you know, you even think about places like Georgia, and in the state of Georgia, especially in Atlanta, predominantly Black, the mayor was battling with the governor to be able to restrict and make rules of restrictions in the city, because the governor of the state said, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to restrict people's rights. And here are the people, the African-American people in general in Atlanta saying, look, I don't care what you say. We don't believe that. This stuff is trying to kill us. And we, you know, health insurance, health care, blah, 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 all these different things, overall health conditions, and not having those things to help. They were like, look, we have to protect ourselves.
We have to protect,
because nobody's protecting us.
Right.
And so you have this whole thing that's going on in terms of, you know, how do we, but still the question goes back to, you know, why is it that so many more African Americans across the country, not just in specific areas, across the country, 2.5 times is like significant. You talk statistics, that is definitely statistically significant with just about any kind of population they may have. You know, if they're truly looking at the numbers across the country and the numbers, the amount of volume of numbers in there, that is a major statistical difference.
It is.
I would dare say from a statistical standpoint, if you looked at the whole nation, if you were off by a couple of percent, it could be significant, statistically significant. You're like 2.5 times, 50 per 100,000 versus 20. That's just, it's bizarre.
It is.
And so, you know, what's going to happen with this? What can be done? What will be done? It remains to be seen. Now, one other thing we got to talk about as our guest comes on, it's about 10 after here. And look, it is election week. We can't get away
Yes.
without mentioning that, right? It's election week.
Yes, it is.
We've come down to the wire. Really a few days away.
Down to it.
Man, it's like let the games begin.
Exactly. Exactly.
Games part 2. I don't know.
Exactly.
You have pre-election games and you have
Exactly.
post-election games
Oh, my
coming up.
goodness.
And it's about to be on in a couple of days.
Sequel.
So, I mean, this has been an amazing election year.
Mhm.
Just because there have been so many things that have been done different than ever before. This pre-voting aspect, early voting is something that is completely new. Well, not completely new.
Well,
take that back, because it had been accessible in some areas. You've had people that were able to write in for, who mail in for quite
yes,
a bit of
my
time.
mom has mailed in.
But mostly people do like overseas, things like that.
Right,
You know,
in Jamaica.
it's the first time I think that it has just been mass open, and especially early voting, along with people sending out ballots or requesting ballots in numbers never seen before. So thus far, we've had nearly 80 million people who have voted already.
Oh wow!
And
early
it's
voting.
not even Tuesday yet, right? That's like
that's
more
interesting.
That's more than a half.
Yes,
it's getting close to 2/3 the number of people who voted in the election 4 years ago in total. Isn't that crazy? So before the election started, you have a mass number of people who have voted either by mail or in person in advance of the election. So there's a lot of questions as to what is this going to mean in terms of, when the election actual day, Tuesday, comes up.
Right.
Does that mean there's just going to be a lot less people that vote on Tuesday? Or do we truly have numbers that are just going to be completely beyond anything we've seen in decades, really? So it's really interesting to see what this means. Does this mean that more Democrats are voting? Does it mean that more Republicans are voting? Is the early thing a Democratic thing, or is it just in general? We don't know. We
don't.
So a lot to be learned and a lot to be seen, including what happens on Tuesday.
Yes.
We're praying, by the way.
Oh my goodness.
for this whole thing right now, because what do you think is going to happen after the election?
That is an interesting question. We will get some interesting answers to that as well.
Well, so if Trump wins, right,
well, then, he's happy.
More than likely, Biden, if the numbers say that, he will respectfully or frustratingly or however step away, and so it shall be. And then we have 4 more years of Trump. If Trump loses, what do you think he's going to do?
Let the games begin.
Let the game. I mean, it's going to be on.
It really is, because he has already said that he will not concede peacefully.
He's also said that he only thinks he can lose if they cheat.
If they cheat is the only way that he could lose. So, with that, him thinking that they could possibly cheat. He's already putting that out there, that he is going to not go down easy.
If he loses, he's absolutely going to think they cheated, and some kind of way we got to find it.
Yep, they're going to do a recount. He's going to go to court. He will do all sorts of things. He is going to go out kicking and screaming.
Well, you know what? I think he's going to take what President Obama did, right? Because again, they didn't believe that Trump really. How could he win between Clinton and Trump, and just being open and honest, right? And so they went into investigation mode, make sure everything was fair, make sure everything was right. Boom, boom, boom. For the last couple of months of his tenure in office, he was using everything he could legally to try and confirm that there was no mischief, blah, 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 blah. I think Trump would do that on steroids.
Most definitely.
I think he'll do the same thing, but he'll do it to such a massive,
That's who he is.
He'll go into such a huge push drive for everybody from the CIA to the FBI. To everybody to go into this major overhaul.
Yes.
Not to mention what's going to happen in the courts, not to mention what's going to happen everywhere else. It's just
unless somebody just shuts him down.
How are they going to do that? He's president. He's still president.
He's still president. That's the catch.
For
That's
2
the
more
catch.
months, he's still in charge.
That is the catch.
So there's no shutdown. He's just going to go crazy in the courts, recounts. It's just going to be a complete mess. And I don't honestly think it matters.
Okay, so if he loses, right? You're saying that he could still He's still the president.
He's still the president until
they actually say, okay.
No, even if he loses,
yes,
until there's a transition on usually January 20th to 21st,
right. So
he's still the president for 2.5 more months.
That's right.
And so he's gonna be fighting and doing everything he can
up until then.
Not to mention two other things we have our guests to get on. I believe that he's gonna he can really continue to drag things out depending on what the courts say, especially going up to the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So he may drag things out for an extended amount of time, and we'll see what happens if it goes past January. Apparently, it's happened once before, where I think they went to like March or May before they finally finalized the elections. So there's that. Then there's the Trump dynasty question, right? Some people are saying if he loses, he might actually try and run again in 2024.
And then there's also the probability of Trump Jr., the
possibility of Trump, that he could run.
Right, that he could run again.
Trump dynasty might be okay. We're out of time. So that's a whole nother story.
That's a whole other story.
We have a great guest today, and maybe we'll get him involved. We'll entangle him in some of this conversation as well, and see how much we can draw him into the same questions. We're excited to have our state senator, Joe Robach, who's been a great ally of ours in a lot of different ways, joining us. And so we're gonna have him come in and join the conversation right now. Just give it a second for him to come in. See him coming. Oh, got music on still.
I give it the music.
And we'll have him come and join us. I see his name, but he's on mute, and I don't see his face yet, which means he's coming.
Yeah.
He's gathering himself.
Yes.
Getting the hair right, get the last little bit of makeup on. I'm gonna keep talking about it.
Yay! Pastor Stewart, you guys gotta forgive me for at this time I should be more technologically advanced with all the Zooming I've been doing, but I'm still on the learning curve.
We're all learning.
You've probably done like 100 a week at this point, haven't you?
I do. And the good news is today, I'm just not dressed from the waist up. I'm fully dressed.
Well, I saw you had somebody in your office, so I was hoping that was the case.
Yeah, I often need help. So I was on there, I saw my name, but I didn't see the picture. And then I always forget about that little mute you got to hit.
Yeah, it's step-by-step thing. Trust me, we do it every week, and we find reasons to somehow get something wrong every time we do it.
Get it wrong till you get it right.
So how you doing, man? Haven't seen you in a while. How things been going?
I am doing fine, and what would I say? I really do, this may be particular to you and your show, but I really do try to, within reason, without being too preachy, practice what I believe. So, we're just literally trying to, we've been helping an inordinate amount of people, unfortunately, process their unemployment claims.
Yeah.
It's changed from not a lot of legislative activity due to COVID-19, but a lot of people, even businesses, trying to stay open. Right. That hurts my heart that, unfortunately, good or bad, decisions have been made in this state to really be somewhat curtailing. We could get into that for an hour. Some people ask me, I don't have the answer why it's okay to be in Walmart, Wegmans, or Target, but not church. We've kind of crossed some of those over, but just been working with a lot of people. Yeah. And then, thank goodness that there is still some things with safe practices that still are occurring. Yesterday I met with a group of students from Rochester Academy Charter Prep, which was great. And we do even have some business activity, which from challenge sometimes comes opportunity, is growing. We had the groundbreaking for Green Light in their new offices, which is a different type and a faster fiber optic internet service. So, the life is going on for me. I've tried to, in all candor, tried to focus on others and do my job right up to the end of the year. Yeah. Because that's important to me. Yeah. And as old fashioned and as trite as it sounds, I'm trying to live up to the words of, I say to everybody, what an honor and privilege it's been for me to have this position. Yeah. And so I want to finish the way I started with the same passion and work ethic.
Mhm.
Yeah. How long have you been a state senator now? I mean,
In the end of December, when my term ends, it'll be 18 years.
wow.
Wow.
And were
I was
you?
just a young man when I started, when I first met you.
Yeah. I think we've known each other for a good portion of that, actually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Were you
Um,
in a political office prior to that, or was that your first political office?
No, then I was in the state assembly for 10 years before that.
Okay.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I've been around this now for 28 years.
Yeah.
Been elected.
Mhm.
I did work part-time for Ralph Quattrochalki,
Oh yeah.
and of course was always around it with my family.
Uh-huh.
But even to that note, um, we only know what we know in this world.
Right.
And so I think, my parents' advice was very good.
Hmm.
We're in a two-party system, no doubt. I'm not denying it, but we really came from community and then picked a party.
Right.
As a matter of fact, for me, I'm one of the rare people, I've tried both of them.
Hmm.
I don't think either one has the answer. I really do, in the true sense of the word, try to be a little bit more independent.
Mhm.
And then you have to figure out, issues on yourself.
Yeah.
This will relate to you. I've had people my whole life tell me in some of my positions, not on delivering for the community or treating people fairly, but, social issues that, I'm trying to push religious beliefs on them. I don't share that viewpoint. I
Right.
am who I am.
Yeah.
I don't hide it. I
Mhm.
meet with them and say, this is why I feel this way about this issue, that issue. And I have to, before I can be true and hardworking for you, I have to be able to look myself in the mirror and be
Right.
comfortable. So, I've just tried to do
Yeah.
those things. But
Mhm.
I reflect back, it's great to be able to cite so many things that we've got done.
Yeah.
From huge things like the medical center at the U of R to
Mhm.
repurposing Eastman Business Park, which public-private collaboration, put in some money in the energy side that you're very aware of. We now have 5,000 non-Kodak jobs in there,
Mhm.
which is great.
Yep.
Right down to the little things like, making sure we have, nurses in the schools, every school, including the city, and even helping somebody, get a job, which really isn't in my title description, but they're going to be able to stay in Rochester. And even though you don't have to use your contacts to do that, that's very rewarding to look back on those things. And I say this at the end of the day. I think I'm untypical in this sense.
Mhm.
I go to Albany for purpose, not because I like that side.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, I really am much more comfortable in a neighborhood group or in somebody's living room trying to solve their problem than I am being on television. Some people don't believe that, but I
Yeah.
know that to be true for me. Always was, still is. So I will miss that part a little bit, but I have to say, off of the accomplishments, all the people that you get to meet
Mhm.
definitely has not only been good for me to learn about them, to help them, but I think it's also made me a fuller person.
Yeah.
You could say it that way.
Yeah.
That you see things through a different lens
Mhm.
when you get a broader perspective, or you do have somebody, invite you into their home or their business.
Mhm.
It's a little bit different than talking to them about it at the grocery store or on the phone.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, so you've been in this for 28 years at the state level. You made the decision this year not to run again. You could have, but you decided not to.
Yes.
I imagine over the course of this time, a lot has changed in politics.
Mm.
What was it like when you first got into it that made
Yeah.
you want to get into it, and what now has changed over time that you've experienced?
Yeah, good. It's a great question. So, when you first go in, certainly there's a learning curve, right?
Sure.
And the more things have changed, sometimes for me, the more they've stayed the same, right?
Yeah.
So there's social issues that are changing, but
Mhm.
the nuts and bolts of running government
Right.
and what impacts it hasn't changed that much.
Mhm.
And I do think, ironically, the task at hand that would help many things is still as real as ever. And there's no question, I don't mean it meanly. Good for them, bad for us.
Mhm.
Because so much of the Democratic Party is so wed to New York City,
Mm.
it always gives us a harder challenge. And
Right.
I've always made the argument that whether we're Democrats, Republicans, we should be working more together geographically, a little bit more like they do in Congress.
Yeah.
And on individual projects for Rochester, we did that, but never globally. And I think that's what needs to occur. I have nothing against New York City,
Yeah.
but I don't think, here, I'll be very candid. I'm not a communist. I'm never going to be a communist.
Mhm.
I think the left politics of Bill de Blasio and AOC are wrong direction.
Mhm.
And the Democratic Party has gone so far to the left
Yeah.
now. That's different. And this is the most important thing.
Mhm.
And they control everything.
Yeah.
So for the first time, that's why I chose not to run.
Right.
I am of purpose, not of title.
Right. So
You know,
can't do
I
it.
thought the bail reform was terrible. I still do.
Yeah.
And so in the old days, we could have said, we're not going to do this unless we change X, Y, Z. If the issue is we have kids in Rikers Island, do what we did up here who can't make a small bail. We created a program to get people out early and give them representation and put a little resources into it. Don't throw out the whole bail system where now I have to have lists of people calling and said, here's the very person that broke into my house is now walking outside my sidewalk
Right.
8 hours later, almost taunting me.
Yeah.
That's a bad scenario because there's two sides to every coin.
Absolutely.
So sometimes I think that and this is again, my opinion,
Mhm.
but it's always based on experience. When we couldn't stop that,
Mhm.
that was very discouraging to me. And then we were kind of told by the people who were in power, we're going to revisit it.
Right.
We'll have some more open dialogue on it.
Yep. We heard that.
Never really did.
Uh-huh.
It became very political. And for whatever reason, I don't think that's the right way. I even in these crazy times we're in a little bit,
Mhm.
and it's everybody.
Mhm.
I think we have to get back to more civil dialogue, a little bit more listening to everybody else. And it's very interesting, not to digress, because I think it's directly related.
Mhm.
Very rarely am I moved by something I see on TV. There is a show called Social Dilemma. I don't know if you've seen it,
No.
but literally all our social media is being driven by that, the AI that picks it up so quickly. So whether you're a far leftist,
Right.
a conservative, to a little less degree, a moderate,
Yeah.
Mhm.
it is looking at what you're looking at, what appeals to you is only going to show you more of that and less
Yeah.
of the other thing. So
Yeah.
we're never really seeing the whole thing. And then it is real, and I don't mean it in the presidential way, but what you're seeing, how real it is or not, it isn't. So here's one that I don't know is true, right? So we talk even about Facebook.
Mhm.
Somebody told me, I got a message from somebody who is in my faith community that said, Facebook is taking down, people are posting the Lord's Prayer.
Mhm.
Please post this as quickly as we can and let's keep it up.
Right.
I don't even know if that's true.
Yeah.
I agree with the sentiment,
Yeah.
but is Facebook really taking it down, or is this a chain
Yeah.
thing based on an unfounded real fear? I don't know.
Or does somebody want to start that rumor?
Yes.
No, there are a lot of things happening.
Yes.
You have censorship things, but I want to go back to the point you're making about AI picking up, because I do agree and believe that so much of the media right now is biased in one side or the other, not
Right.
just to one side, but it's become so, the whole atmosphere has become so polarized.
Yes.
From
Yeah.
politics to all the social media around,
Yes.
including the news media.
Mhm.
It's very biased in terms of what it's trying to present. And two things, they push things with an intent of what you're supposed to believe from what they push,
Mhm.
number one.
Right.
And like you said, in terms of the AI comment, when something becomes a hot item, then that's all you see
That's all.
going forward.
Yes.
You see
Correct.
every example of that specific thing. And it goes back now for at least the past few years.
Yes.
But that's what happens. One incident becomes popular, and then you
Right.
see every other example of that incident that
Mhm.
comes up anywhere in the country.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it really pushes this persuasion in terms of what your opinions are in one direction or other.
Mhm.
This is not what it used to be like.
And it really does. So, we talked about the people you get to meet, right?
Mhm.
I could say this is both as a human being, a person, and as elected official. It is one of the joys.
Mhm.
It's always more fun to find out what you have in common,
Mhm.
whether it's not just political opinion, but music, food. You learn so much. You get to try more things. Like hey, I'm 62. I've never skied in my life. Maybe when I retire, I'll try it. No, right? And people are telling me that. But it's good to know people that did it so
Yeah.
they can tell you what to expect
Right.
and what to do. And
Uh-huh.
so I've always been amazed at people that would say to me, like, I can't believe you did that. Well, here, I'll give it to you directly. And when I talk about race, people are like, well, I can't believe you're not afraid to go here or there. How do you know? You
Right.
go in and you tell them, I want to listen to you. I want to have a dialogue with you and your community group.
Yeah.
I want to know about your church and what you're doing outside the walls of the faith community to help the Joseph Avenue neighborhood.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Those are, that's how you really get to know people.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about does just the opposite.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
while I'm somewhat glad people recognize that about me, I
Mhm.
would like them to kind of holistically embrace that,
Yeah.
because I think when you see things, a lot of it's lenses
Mhm.
a little bit differently.
Mhm.
You may still keep your passion, but it might at least make you more willingly
Yeah.
come to the middle a little bit more. And in some things,
And you can
Yes.
empathize with things
Right.
too.
yes, right, exactly.
Mhm.
But then people also have to understand, the bail reform is a good example.
Mhm.
While you may have this sliver of good,
Yeah.
it's going to do a whole lot of bad for a lot of people in the same group. It's like, so now, then this is where the opinion comes in. Where is that balance of power
Mhm.
to authority and the perpetrator?
Mhm.
And what about the victims? Where do they come in the circle of what we're trying to get it right?
Yeah.
And I do think this most of the time.
Uh-huh.
I don't believe this. It's not because I'm in elected office. It's because life has taught me that.
Mhm.
I forgot what they call that when you have the circles. There is a spot where they overlap.
Yeah.
Let's
Right.
try to get into that
Right.
spot
Uh-huh.
instead of being way out here or way out here.
Yeah. There has been a lot going on. I mean, you talked about interacting with people at the local level,
Mhm.
and there's been a lot of stuff going on here in Rochester
A
the
lot.
past couple of
Yes.
months.
Mhm.
Have you been involved? I mean, your role really is to state, but have you been engaged at all in some of the things happening in the communities here since this Daniel Pruitt incident took place? And how has that gone? What kind of
Sure.
feedback have you received?
So, this is, let's go back. So certainly that is more localized.
Mhm.
But if there's things we can do to help,
Right.
Mhm.
we absolutely want to.
Mhm.
And, they're tough jobs. I'm not saying this, but this is where I think, like, again, I'm a constitutionalist.
Mhm.
However, how people express their opinion does matter. And I think there's a right and a wrong way.
Right.
I can be as excited about something as anybody, but
Mhm.
I'm not going to go out and spray paint on City Hall,
Right.
some derogatory thing about the mayor. I'm
Yeah.
not going to occupy somebody else's street or block the entrance to their apartment. And I
Yeah.
sure as heck aren't going to loot or riot or block traffic on 490.
Right.
Now, I'll say this to you. There's nothing controversial about that.
Mhm.
I think those people need to get removed, if not arrested.
Mhm.
There has to be a price to pay for bad behavior. That doesn't mean their argument and their issue can't be heard, but
Legitimate.
there is a right way and a wrong way. And
Right.
it doesn't matter. We can never get to the ends justify the means.
Right.
Uh, the Constitution is a great example.
Yeah.
I believe in the Second Amendment,
Mhm.
but I'm not going to go with a group
Mhm.
that I don't like,
Yeah.
or they don't agree with the rest of their agenda
Mhm.
to support the Second Amendment. And I'm trying to tell these folks, if they're really legitimate about legitimate reform, don't be attacking the mayor or anybody else.
Yeah.
Say your piece, have your forums,
Mhm.
and do that. I don't buy that our frustration justifies whatever we do. If you look back in history,
Uh,
allowing that to happen to any political polar is how very, very bad things occur.
yeah. I mean, I
Mhm.
think the vast majority of people involved in these things agree with that. I mean, they aren't necessarily trying to push violence.
Right.
But there's certainly a group, there's always going to be a subset. And some of those seem to be people that are locally frustrated. But this year, I think more than any, we've seen this kind of takeover by outside groups that have come in and stimulated these behaviors. And now they seem to be kicking in to where people think that's a normal behavior. You know, as for example, here in Rochester, the initial response was, hey, we want to protest. We want to get our voice out. And we've had protests here before the past couple of years. But this, all of a sudden, this tearing up stores and starting fires and turning over cars was not normal for at least this time, this era, right? And then this starts. But now we were just talking earlier about the situation in Philadelphia this week. And again, you get into this looting and things like that right off the jump. It seems like it's been seeded in, and now people are starting to act like this is normal.
Well, and so I'm going to go back, and this is, you asked me what role you can play. In those cities where these very liberal mayors have not only allowed it, have encouraged it, and then said to the population, don't ask them.
Burning of your own city.
They had, literally. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I wouldn't believe it. You know, they have every right. I understand why they're angry. That's the green light. Now, all I'm saying is, and I've learned this, that, you know, I grew up in the city of Rochester too. Where I grew up, you know, crime was not, it was there, but it was a little bit more underground, and it wasn't a prevalent issue in a quality of life on a daily basis. But for the people that I know that are active, or, you know, some of these queen mothers that, whether it's at their church or in their home, take care of people, it's a safe haven. In certain communities, they want the exact change that other people are saying. They're defining everybody and painting with the broad brush. There's no dialogue. They're saying, no, it's not, we don't even want the police in here. We want to defund them. I'm like, good luck with that. Because I got news for you. You know, I've dealt with a lot of people, and, you know, I've been there. When somebody's in your house, you want a quick response. Or even at that point, the people, they have a right to their opinion, but then listen to the answer. I think some people in the city, I have to say, have actually been rough on the mayor. That curfew was for a good reason. When they have these pop-up parties and they get huge. There was one night on a weekend where they had to deploy every available man, woman, police personnel to the site because fights were breaking out. All kinds of crazy stuff was happening to protect them. Now, at the same time, with everybody there, if somebody's breaking into my house at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's no one to respond. I mean, there's a good. So the reason was we didn't want to shut down this party for no reason. It was for a very valid reason. And this is where I think people should be listening with open ears and open things, and not saying, if I don't win, I'm going to yell and scream even louder. And going back to your thing of what you said and why it's occurring and becoming the norm, I believe it was an abdication of logic and responsibility for these very liberal mayors, and even in some cases governors, saying, I understand why you're doing it. It's okay. It's never okay. I would say it that way, whether you're Old Testament, New Testament, there is nothing in my faith belief, my personal belief, that says I have a reason to impede on someone else in a detrimental way, unless I'm defending my family or myself. That's my belief. And I'll continue to have that no matter what they want to tell me is the norm or what's okay. And I think we need like-minded people to continue to say that. Otherwise, it really may become the norm. And that will be awful. Because, you know, for years, even though they more threatened it, you know, you would see these groups, never in New York. But, you know, I would see these things on the internet about these far rights or neo-Nazis getting geared up for war. And I'd say, for what? What war? Who are they going to fight? State your opinion. If I don't agree with them, I don't agree with it. Are you trying to intimate to me, if I don't agree with you, you're going to shoot me? Is that what what is the message? They're all, you know, they can do it within the guise of the law, but what is the purpose? And so I really do believe, again, First Amendment, people should be entitled to their opinion. But I actually think what the vice president said was very good. You're entitled to your opinion, but not ignoring the facts. And we should all be listening to each other in that guise.
Yeah, but the issue, there is an issue that there are a lot of people who are frustrated of trying to work through the system and not seeing change. Or in particular this year, I think amongst the African-American communities, there's been an issue where it seems like we're back where we started from, right?
Yeah.
Things that we thought we had moved past, things that we thought were over, or have come right back and recycled back.
Yes.
It's caused a huge amount of frustration. And so people are saying, look, we got to do something different because we've tried going for this, and so it's reflected out in all different kinds of ways, from people protesting to people wanting to fight, to people wanting to shoot, but people want something to truly change. And the question is, we can try all the right things, but when that doesn't happen, then what do you do?
Right. Well, so there's no question. I won't say it's a good thing, but I think everyone certainly agrees. And now people are going to get tried, but George Floyd,
right,
very different than some of the other cases.
Yeah.
And that is a degree of, and so I think that's it too. I don't want to be too autobiographical. I grew up in the city of Rochester too.
Yeah.
We were taught, if there was an altercation, you don't fight the police in the street. That's what court is for.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people that are operating by, a different set of rules and guidelines.
People right now that are very scared, right? Just literally scared.
Yeah.
Scared of
Anxiety.
the concept of being arrested, the idea of being,
Terrified.
Things right now have gone to this huge point of escalation, that intention.
Yes.
That it's, how do you resolve this? And how do you, we've talked to several different people, both about the different perspectives that they have coming in. There's right on both sides that really needs to come together.
Right.
That's why we do this program.
Right.
But there's also this reality that we keep getting shown over and over and over again how the police are not de-escalating. And granted, we're saying maybe 1 out of 100 or 1,000 cases, whatever.
Right.
But it just gets people into this sense that, look, we're not comfortable, we're not safe.
Yes.
Something needs to change.
Something needs to
Right. So this is the wrong. This isn't the answer. So let me say this first. So the good news is we are having, hopefully, not going to focus on the bad on both sides, but have a global conversation to change it. Things are being done. So certainly in my lifetime, I could say this, even the diversity of the police force,
right,
almost everywhere is improved to be more inclusionary. In the city of Rochester, absolutely.
We talked to Todd Baxter about that a few weeks ago. And I talked to him straight up about it. He was on the program, and we said, I mentioned to him, I said, you know what? I saw one of the riots that they had for Daniel Prude, the original ones that went downtown. And the crazy group came in and started burning up cars and all that. And they brought in the sheriff's department to help form a line to block.
Right.
And I told him, I said, I looked at that picture, and the one thing that blared out to me was that the whole group was white men.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you think about that? What are you doing? And he did talk about what he was going to try and do, but it just goes back to the reality that these are still things that are out there that really need more work.
Right. So that's just step one. But, then this is me, real talk Robach, right? So even inside RPD, people know. They said, if you're a white guy, you're not going to be the chief of police ever again. It's not going to happen. I don't know if that's real, but that's how they feel. Okay. So, things are being done. I try to step back and see it all. Maybe we need to have different training policies, and maybe we need to do things a little bit differently, even using technology. So I was looking at the Philadelphia thing.
Yeah.
Clearly, that kid was threatening. Now, could they have tased him instead of use lethal force?
They didn't have
and maybe that should be the policy if there's time. See, this is why it's hard. Whether you're a black police officer, a man, a woman, every situation is different. Okay. And you have every right to go home to your family at the end of your shift too.
Absolutely.
So it's a very hard thing. And they are by nature dealing with what no one wants to. So mental health plays a huge part. But if it's a mental health issue, you can take your loved one into an office and maybe meet with somebody.
Yeah.
But if they're a mental health issue and also a threat to the public, now you got a much more volatile, different situation.
Right.
So that's why it makes it so hard and so complex. But I do believe that through more training, and we should have it at this
Yeah.
point in time,
Mhm.
because so many things have changed,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that may help
Mhm.
reduce the amounts of incidents
Right.
where even we get to the point
Mhm.
where lethal force even has to be contemplated.
Yeah.
Now, there's two
gotta
sides
be
to
a better way.
there's
Yeah.
two sides to that coin though too.
Mhm.
And I think we do have to get back,
Yeah.
going back to what I said earlier, that authority should be respected. You know, when we were raised, I grew up as a city kid too, black and white, Latino alike.
Yeah.
You know, policemen are your friend. If you get lost, this was pre-cell phone. You
Mhm.
know, you find somebody, you know.
Mhm.
That didn't mean we didn't ever do anything wrong. We
Yeah.
didn't do chocolate stuff.
You got something to tell
And
us? What?
I get the, that's another time for another show. But there's a lot of there's a lot of things that can be done, as well as, you know, foot patrols again.
Right.
I love, like, I go to
Back in the community.
SWAT Community Association, Maplewood, the police are there every day talking about what they're doing and what input you can have. People need to take advantage of that. We will not solve it
Yeah.
if the narrative becomes
Mhm.
every policeman and every policewoman, regardless of race, creed, color, sex, is bad.
Yep.
And just like we can't have police thinking that just because someone might be breaking the law, you can treat them any way you want, even excessive force.
Mhm.
That has to be
Yeah.
removed as well. But
Yeah.
we're not machines.
Right.
So anything that can be done, you know, I tell people this.
Uh-huh.
I'm a state senator.
Yeah.
On the rare occasions, you want something to tell you here? I'll tell you.
Mhm.
I'm driving back from Albany and I'm going a little bit too fast and I might get stopped.
Yeah.
I keep my hands at 10 and 12 and I'm in a suit.
Yeah.
And because I know it's dark and it's out. I don't know what
What's
this
happened?
police officer where he just came from.
Yeah.
And we're out in an isolated road on the thruway in the middle of who knows where.
Yeah.
Say, officer, I'm going to take my left in. I'm going to get my wallet out. Not because I'm afraid, because I want the right exchange.
Yeah. You don't want something to get misconstrued. And I understand.
Correct.
But I'll share this with you, and then we got to talk about national politics before we get done. We got to talk about national politics. But I'll share experience with you. You know my background. You know my business career, right? So I'd say, you know, when I was in charge of Rochester Silverworks, a spinoff from Kodak, that was now over 5 years ago. But back when I led that business, largest silver refinery in the world, lots of money going in and out of there. We had vaults, big vaults. And we dealt with the police. The police talk about our friends. The police were our friends, because if an alarm went off, we needed them to be there and aware of everything that was going on.
Yes.
And, you know, being the leader of that organization at the time, there were times when I would get called or I'd have to show up. I remember a couple times having to show up to be there when the police got there to show them where everything was at. Never had a worry, never had a problem. Policeman came, hey, yeah, here, let me take you, boom, boom, boom. About maybe 2 years ago now, not even 2 years ago, now at my new company, I'm sitting in the office one day and somebody walks out and they turn on the alarm, and I'm in my office and they didn't see me.
Yes.
So I'm the last one there. The alarm goes off, right? Because I've got a motion sensor in my office. I'm like, oh man, the alarm went off. And by the time I realized it and shut everything down, they had already sent the police. The first thing that goes through my mind, talking about how things have changed, the first thing that went through my mind is, I don't want this policeman to come here with me, the only person left, and think that I'm the one that's trying to rob the place.
Right.
So I'm like going outside, you know, I'm meeting him outside, hands up, you know, hey, you know, but it shows you how much things have changed. Whereas in the past, big business, big money, never thought that they could think I would be the problem.
Right.
Here, I'm like, you know,
Yes.
because of the way things have changed, it's like you have to think. You talk about having your hands on the wheel.
Yeah.
I mean, the point is that there is a heightened sensitivity right now in terms of the fears, and some people treat that better than others. Some people have other reasons why, you know, like there was one guy that got killed because he was fine until they wanted to put him in handcuffs. As soon as they wanted to put him in handcuffs, he freaked because he's like, he knew he had warrants, right?
Right.
He ends up dead, right? But there's just a heightened sensitivity right now that makes it difficult to
Which
say,
we outlawed that in New York State. They can't use a chokehold at all.
right. Well,
anymore.
that's good. That's a
Yeah.
start, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm all for, you know, reasonable. Yeah, I agree with you. When I had Sheriff Baxter on, I also had a friend of mine who was a retired California Highway Patrolmen, African American. So we had a really good conversation about realities that were out there. And I believe and understand they're in high risk situations all the time.
Yeah.
And they want to go home safe and they have to protect themselves. Total respect for that. But there's got to be a way that, we can deal with things so that, both sides end up in and out of this safely. And so they need protection. So maybe something like a choke hold in some cases is still needed. I'm a realist, right? Maybe you can't just take every little thing and say, we're not going to do this anymore. The only thing I wish is that they would come together and really focus the issue, right?
We're the same. And that's never going to happen completely. So you got to know this, right?
Yeah.
If you're been doing something your whole life, you're going to be reluctant to change.
That's a whole nother.
No matter which side you're on. And
right.
People got to be open-minded to that too.
Absolutely.
On both sides.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Seriously, I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah.
If you think the issue is overzealous police and crime is down, you're delusional.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. But especially, it's the irony of it is, especially in the areas of the places they're saying they're trying to be helpful.
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't agree with that. That's not reality.
I inherently believe that most police officers do not want to have on their back the issue of having killed somebody,
right?
The issue of been getting involved in all this chaos that goes on now with nobody wants to be in the middle of that. You got people that may have issues, but that's one thing. But there are certainly dug in biases on both sides, as you said, because there's biases on the community side that says, hey, the police are not our friend. There's bias on the police side that said these people don't like us, and so we got to handle it, and there's all kind of things and depths here that have to be dealt with. And it starts with conversations, which is why we're here, right? Let's talk about what's going on in the national scene here, because this is election week, right? This is it. We're down to the wire. Tuesday, kind of the process has been going on. We're seeing voting, at least in advance, like we've never seen before. It looks like over almost 2/3 of what was equivalent to last time voting will be complete by this weekend before we even get into Tuesday. Who knows what this means? But there is honestly, truthfully, high anxiety all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think of, the political scene itself, as we said earlier, has become so polarized. It is one extreme. And I remember a few years ago, and I'm not even going to point to where exactly I saw it start, where it went from having difference of opinions that we have to come together on to being, we have to win.
Right.
We have to beat the other team. And it's this whole huge mindset now of battle. It's war.
It's battles,
right? It's a civil war. It's us versus you, and either we win or you win. There's no compromise here. So, what do you see happen? What do you forecast in your crystal ball in terms of where this goes?
I think you're right on target. Not to be anecdotal, but I think this is the most polarized I've ever seen it.
I believe it. I agree.
From being a young man to being elected office myself today, I've never quite seen it like this. I even unfortunately know a couple that literally split up their union over politics.
I can believe it. I believe it.
Which, as much as I'm passionate about it and spent so much of my life,
right,
I don't espouse that, because if you get back to what we were talking about earlier, what is the purpose? I don't just want to help the people that think like me.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to move us. And this is a different lens too, not to point a finger. See, I don't think America's perfect, but I do think America's great. And not for a political slogan, because no matter where you come from, just like me, 3 out of my 4 grandparents didn't speak English.
Yeah.
Through education, through opportunity, through access to capital, a lot of programs, and we have a ton of them in New York, to help people of every demographic.
Right.
We take too much of that for granted and get to this win case all. And what we have is a bad crossing.
Yeah.
So the people that are paying the bill are sick and tired of it. Many of them are moving out and voting with their feet. Gone. And you got people who get a lot of services.
Right.
Who are very angry still and very unappreciative.
Right.
And even come from the perspective, that they're getting the short end of the stick in life and it's somebody else's fault. I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah.
So you have to steer people toward the good, the commonality, and that's all you can do, and try to lead by example. Believe me, some of my friends would laugh if they're watch this. You know, believe me, I can get as mad as everybody. I haven't always been a senator.
Yeah.
You know, I have some things I'm very glad I've moved in a different direction. Actually, my faith community has helped me with that.
Yeah.
It's, you know, that's life. We all have to negotiate those things. But globally, I do feel this way, that whether you're an arch conservative or you're a communistic far left liberal, nobody, we should not be listening to any message that isn't exclusionary or says we can't talk or try and come to a compromise. That is why the Constitution is great.
Right.
We're the only nation, too. You know, even in the Declaration of Independence, it's the application of making sure everybody gets treated fairly. Not that America's bad or those principles aren't bad. We're the only country I know of that has pursuit of happiness in our document of intent. Now, what is bad is when it's easier for me to be happy because I may be this or that, and it's harder for somebody else.
Right.
But I think this is what's so strange to me. I am very New York State centric government and very Rochester. I admit that.
Yeah.
But I see all kinds of good things moving the needle in the right direction. Can I say to an African American kid, your bar might not be a little bit different? I can't with total reserve. But I know, just going back to what you were talking about before, there's going to be some other things where that may be true of somebody else, which because we're trying to make more diversity and quotas and other things, they feel like they're getting the short end of the stick. It's just trying to make it work and say what the reason is and what is the result and outcome. If we focused on that, and I'm not saying this in any pandering way, if people did embrace any faith a little bit more truly, they would look at it through a more compromising, kinder lens.
Well, that's
it
the whole.
Not be, there's no faith group that says you're absolutely right and only you have to win no matter what happens. There isn't one. I've studied comparative religions. Whether I believe them or not, nobody really says that. And the people that do say that, I believe, are taking things way, way out of context.
Yeah, right.
And making a very, very bad application. So I agree with you 100% that not that you can't say something that's, you know, it all can be a little bit flammable, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the one paying the bill, you don't want to hear you're not doing your fair share.
Right.
If you're somebody who thinks you're getting the short end of the stick, you don't want to hear somebody say, oh, that's baloney. You gotta.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of a two-party system is checks and balances, right?
Should be.
And you mentioned the word earlier. It used to be about consensus. Okay.
Yes.
You think differently than I do. You think differently than I do. But we're going to come together, and what's best overall for everybody.
Right.
Consensus is what it's about.
For the whole.
And you know, I observed a while ago that with the two-party system, it works kind of like a slingshot. It works like one of those pivoting back and forth things, because if it pushes too far one direction, you get a pull counter back to the other side. And so you go Republican, then if you go too far conservative, then the liberals pull it back and you come back this direction. It's a system that's designed to keep you in the middle. But now, and it used to be, okay, we'll come to that middle point and we'll work something out. And so it stays here. But now it pulls so far in one direction that the response is so it's so intense that it goes from one extreme to the other, and it sends the whole nation on this massive change. It sends the world on this massive change. I mean, if, for example, Biden wins this next week, then think of all the things that are going to shift back. When Obama was in charge, and then Trump comes in and he wants to shift everything in this direction, and now Biden comes in, more than likely you have the risk of him shifting, either going middle or shifting again. It sends everything into this kind of, how do you keep up with who we are and what we believe versus finding consensus? How do we get back to where, okay, you're not the enemy. You're part of the same country I am.
Right.
So let's figure out what's best for us, and start trying to push on you what's best for me.
Right.
Right. So and here's the challenge too. I agree with all that, but beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. And what people fear, I think sometimes is, will that pendulum
Thank you, pendulum,
continue to swing a little bit based on what's going on.
Right.
So that can't happen. Well, I guess it can happen, but it has to happen through dialogue. So, like I said,
you have to get tired of it enough. I think
as much as they're talking about a lot of important things,
Yes.
my main concern really is what is the infrastructure? And I don't think we can go communist. I don't. I look at Greece and Venezuela. There were two of the thriving economies that have been ruined recently because of a change in government regime. Now, I don't know this, and I hope if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are successful, they won't go that route. But I'm not sure because they've made some very strong statements prior to this. And again, I'm saying this not as an elected official, but as someone who loves my children, grandchildren, as well as yours, who some I know, I want the world to be better for them. And I can't let some, I don't mean to say they're not important, some other things that are bothering people supersede that for me. That's my choice. That's, but I'm not angry about it, or I get why other people jump something else to the line. That is politics. We deal with so many issues. You talk about protesters. Hell, I've had them out here about being pro-life, which you and I agree on, right? But some people don't. They're entitled to their opinion. What I said to them was, you're entitled to it. Here's coffee and donuts. But don't say I'm something that I'm not. I've explained to you why I have my position. I'm not anti anybody. This is what I think and believe in my head and in my heart. That, I don't think late-term abortions should be legal or immoral. I admit that. And I think that parents have a right to know if their 13 or 14 or 15-year-old daughter
pregnant
getting abortion paid for by the government, I think is wrong policy. Now, not to digress, but when you're in government, you have to deal with those. Since Roe v. Wade has been the law of the land, to me, as important as that issue is, I don't believe that's going to change. So we're talking about other things, but the narrative becomes something else.
But again,
always the way.
Down to, in the past, even some of the things you described would be negotiated, right? This is unrealistic. Here's something that may be better. Let's come together. Let's figure it out. It's got to come back. The pendulum's got to come back to the center, or we're going to tear ourselves apart as a nation. So like you said, with Biden and group, he tends to be more centralist. He comes from that old school of trying to work across the line. But you're right. There's a lot of pull behind him. And how much impact that's going to have. But sooner or later, people have to realize that I think overall the people have been duped. I mean, people have been duped in the following that this is what we got to do. We got to go here, hard right or hard left. And they've really divided the country. Somebody has to be able to lead us back to the center. And now you won't unfortunately be involved in that, at least at this point. You're retired.
Well, I'm going to still be very active in the community. And I was laughing when you said that. A lot of times I used to have a great deal of frustration with the print media, especially because they can kind of manipulate a little bit more where you're talking live. They're going to take the snippet. They got to take the whole thing. One time they said that about me. We don't always agree with Joe Robach, and he can be all over the place, but he does work hard for the district, and he's kind of a raging moderate. Now, because I've sort of been in that silo, it's easy for me to agree with you. But if you come up in the other one, and that's what I'm more scared about. I think that we've had teachers and academics tell kids there is a free lunch. Don't listen to your parents. They don't have the answer. I don't agree with that. I don't think government should be bigger than God, your family, your career. So there is some people you got to listen to what they're saying. That's what, if not overtly, certainly in their scope, are advocating for that. They, whether it's whatever it is, they think government is the be-all, end-all answer. I think it should be a safety net, not a hammock that covers you completely. Again, freedom of religion, those things are good. And it doesn't matter where the polar comes from, the far left or far right. If that pendulum doesn't swing and they get too far out there, that's when it seems to me we have the wrong application of some things.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we close this up, so forget enough about them. What are you going to do now that you're leaving?
Let me tell you my biggest news. Look, I'll tell you a couple of things. I'm following your lead.
Okay.
I never thought I was going to get married again, but I'm doing that.
Hey.
Oh.
I'm getting ready to have my
Wait a minute. We got the scoop.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
I am also going to be a grandfather for the first time. This November, which I'm very excited about.
Yep, I got one.
And honest to goodness, that helps me. No one will ever accuse me. Even people running against me say, they make a joke. Anywhere two are gathered, Joe Robach will show up. Maybe there's two of them. I put a lot of time into this, and I'm happy to do it that way.
Yeah.
But I'm equally going to be happy to spend a little bit more time on family. And then I'm blessed. A lot of people have reached out to me. I probably will work for a couple more years. And there's some big jobs that are very competitive that I'm going to get interviewed for.
Okay.
And a few more things that I'm interested in that I may pursue.
You're not really retiring, you're just coming out of political life.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna look at it in a different way. It's hard when you're there to tell somebody, hey, you got to be more just what we're talking about. Be a little bit more open-minded, because they always think you're trying to sell your principle.
Sure.
But when you're just having a conversation as a dad or as a grandfather or as somebody they know and like, then I think actually maybe you can be more influential, perhaps. I don't know, we're going to walk the road. I'm saying to somebody, maybe you should be that way. It's very interesting to me. I've had that on both sides, right? So when I first got elected, a lot of people used to say, well, he's a rhino. I didn't even know what that was. I go, what's that? A Republican in name only. I go, well, I got to pick one. To me, it's like driving a Ford or a Chevy. I got to get there. I don't get locked in by any political leader. And that's what, I had Sheldon Silver said he was going to get rid of me. He's in jail. Was still there. David Patterson, or not David Patterson, Elliot Spitzer. Who took David Patterson's spot. Said he was going to get rid of me. We're still there. So you do have to find ways, but I do like our dialogue a lot. And I think that's also because of who you are. But I also think that if you're of faith, you have to know that, even God doesn't universally judge us and forgives. So why would you want to say, well, I think have enough hubris that no, it's only my way or no way and everybody else's, because that's really what they're saying to me. Whatever the polar is, that if you don't do what I say, there's going to be consequences to you. And I'm going to exert my strength. And I actually have to control myself. When I saw that videotape of the people in the restaurant, the hair on the back of my neck literally stood up. I don't know what I would have done. But I might have got a little Old Testament there. I thought I was defending my family. And that's no joke. Because that's what happens when people do bad things. Sometimes they push, and I know it's wrong, but they make you start thinking, do I want to have force on force? And that's what we should avoid. Because you use the word, which scares me. I do not. That would be the worst thing for this country, to be that divided.
Yes.
Everything America, what it defends, the freedom it has, even if not perfect, is still about exactly the opposite of that. And we shouldn't take that for granted.
I mean, we really are. We're headed towards a civil war. If things don't change, call it what you want. It may not be army versus army, but it's going to be locale versus locale. It's going to get worse. People in local communities are getting to this point. I mean, when these guys are showing up at these rallies and both sides have AK, 15s and they're heavily armed, it just takes one mistake.
Right. Absolutely.
Set this off. We're headed towards, if we don't change.
And going even back to religion, I hate to keep pushing it. You're the pastor, not me. But if you respect life and believe it's a gift, you're not out wanting to shoot or be violent to anybody.
Right.
And believe me, we all have the capacity. We all have a history. We all have. So I just don't get these excuses. I'm like, look, I learned as a young man, if you're driving around with a gun in the car, eventually somebody's going to use it.
Wait.
Get rid of it. Get away from that.
Yeah.
Not acceptable.
Yeah.
Unless you're defending your home.
Yeah.
That's different.
Right.
But see, even that we got away from. That was another bad policy. Well, we have to look at the reason why they have the gun. No, we don't. If it's not legal, you're not registered, or you use it for something illegal, gone. That was the best thing we ever did with some of these things. If you are a felon, white, black, Latino, gone. You're in violation. But now we don't even put them in jail for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're driving around with your illegal handgun that you're going to use on somebody. Eventually, there's going to be a victim.
Yeah.
No big deal. And so I think those things also permeate that, you know, I hate to say it, at a time when life should be precious and all this communications and computers, and whether you're in a foreign country, we should be all finding our commonality so much more. It's almost like the opposite is happening because we've devalued life at the expense of winning and being right, and having your way. And I don't think that is good.
Well, you know, we've got a lot of things still that are happening that we're going to have to deal with. We're definitely going to miss you being so
Thank you.
engaged, but once you enjoy your life, you know, I will certainly wish that for you, and as we do for us. And, you know,
thank you.
Stay connected. We'll figure out what's going on. Keep your voice out there.
I'll be around. I'm on a lot of boards, and, you know, again, I'll say to you, thank you for everything you do for the community, you guys, and also, you know, whether it's been on the professional side or on the community side or even the church side. Thank you for what you do, and thank you for being a friend to me.
No problem, man. Glad to talk to you. Thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Appreciate having the conversation. Have a good.
Bye-bye, Joe.
Bye-bye now.
God bless.
God bless.
Thank you.
Well, good conversation as always.
Yes,
you know,
yes.
we sometimes, you know, you start at a place and then it just kind of revs up, right?
Right.
You just kind of get.
But I like what he had to say.
Yeah.
I like what he had to say. We have to find a commonality.
I think one of the important things is it's important for people to hear and to discuss from both sides, from all perspectives, because everybody has not only opinion, but everybody has an element of truth associated with what they think and what they believe. A lot of it comes from their background, from things that they've experienced in the past, et cetera, so forth. But if we don't talk them out and bring them together, I mean, we can stay in our own little spot and complain for as long as we want and just get madder and madder that nothing changes.
Well, you know, you have to, I think we have to study both sides of an argument.
Right, absolutely.
You have to, because, you know, each side has something that they believe in, and some have very valid points in what they believe in. But if we can come together and find that commonality, we could make things better than they are right now.
Well, remember in school, they used to have debating classes.
Exactly.
Right? So you learn how to express your opinion and hear the other person.
Well, even in the court of law.
Yeah, because you have to listen to their opinion.
Yes.
So you can either find truth or holes in it.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
And, you know, right now there's a lot of complaining going on both sides without a lot of communication.
Exactly.
A lot of really coming together.
Well, it's a lot of screaming. People are upset. You know,
in so many different ways.
Yes.
And it was almost like, you know, one of the things he was saying, we were talking about nationally how the police need to come together and deal with certain things, and he said it'll never happen. And it's a scary thing to think about that. But you think about all the forces that drive against solving problems that need to be solved.
That need to be solved.
It's a crazy time.
It needs to be solved.
It is a crazy time. You know, we're going to continue having conversations with people to try and open up these thoughts and ideas, and hopefully get some of them that are in key places to talk to each other, because that's really the only way. So thankful to have Joe Robach on today, Joe Robach. Glad for everybody that tuned in. Hope you enjoyed the program. Don't forget to, if you haven't voted yet, this is the last time you have to vote between now and Tuesday. You need to get your vote in. That's the first element of this. Everybody has to understand you got to get involved in the process. And, you know, one thing I forgot to ask him about was what word he would recommend or what he would say to people who are thinking about getting into politics. But there need to be people that get into politics that have the idea of doing the right thing. Just like you need policemen to come in that have the right mindset,
Yes.
you need people to get into politics that have an understanding that this is not about just championing to get as many votes as you can.
Right.
It's about getting the right things done. It's about
Right.
getting the best consensus for the community.
Yes.
So on that note, we're going to wind out of here.
Yes.
And you guys have a good evening. And we will be back next week for more here on Conversations next
Yes.
Saturday. Hope that you will join us then, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.
Yes.
All right. Don't forget, we're around over the weekend. We're here on Sunday morning for Word and Worship, 11:30 a.m. on the church page, and then back Wednesday for Bible study, and on and on and on. Back next Saturday.
Yes, we got things going on.
All right.
Okay.
God bless everybody.
Okay.
Have a good evening. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
But don't worry your soul.